I'm terminating your employment with the branch manager's authority, effective today. Thank you for your hard work until now.
On the verge of retirement, I had moved away from the hectic front desk operations to handle quieter back office tasks. The new, young, and dynamic branch manager, branding it as reform, began to dispose of anything and anyone deemed unnecessary or in the way. Not just objects, but jobs and people too. I don't understand why I'm being fired. I protested, to which the branch manager replied with an exasperated tone.
You're in the way, just lounging around at your desk, doing menial tasks anyone could do, and acting all important. It's irritating to watch.
The manager spouted such absurd reasoning shamelessly. So, they were just menial tasks that anyone could do leisurely. If it was an official order, then I guess there was no helping it. I decided to follow the manager's directive obediently. A week later, I received many calls from the bank. My name is Robert. I'm a bank employee, often working behind the scenes. I'm currently 51 years old. I've stepped back from the busy front desk operations and now mainly handle small administrative tasks. I also assist long-standing customers occasionally. Watching the young employees hustle at the front desk reminds me nostalgically of my younger days. Working leisurely on minor tasks, I have no prospects for further promotion and am just waiting for retirement. But I've grown to like my current role. It's a calm way of working that suits an employee nearing retirement. In fact, most employees around my age at our branch gradually start to scale back their workload. Many retire early to enjoy their later years. Whether for early retirement enjoyment, family matters, or various other reasons, spending time with family, looking after grandchildren, it seems like the right time for a lifestyle change. Just the other day, a branch manager retired before reaching retirement age. He wanted to take care of his family back home. Today, we're getting a new branch manager as his replacement.
Hello everyone, I'm assigned as the new branch manager here from today. My name is Mark. Looking forward to working with you all.
Mark, the new branch manager, greeted the staff energetically during the morning meeting. He looks about 10 years younger than me. Dressed in a crisp suit and sporting an expensive-looking watch. His eyes were shining with determination. His intense demeanor made me think following this guy is going to be tough.
Oh, you there. Can you give me a tour of the branch right away?
Me? Sure, I'll show you around.
Thank you. Everyone else, please start your usual tasks. Don't mind me, just carry on as normal.
Mark approached Susan, a young female employee, and started touring the branch. The rest of us, including myself, got on with our usual tasks.
Excuse me, what task are you working on?
Suddenly, a loud voice from above startled me. Whoa, you scared me. I accidentally blurted that out. Looking up, I saw Mark, arms crossed and looking somewhat disgruntled, with Susan glancing over in a puzzled manner.
What's this?
Mark asked, looking at my work. I honestly replied, I'm checking and entering application forms. Mark then sighed heavily.
Honestly, I've never seen such a laid-back workplace before.
He complained with a look of utter exasperation. By laid back, you mean?
Exactly as it sounds. At the branch I worked at before, no employee would spend time on such tasks. I'm surprised to find employees specialized in back office work here.
Checking and entering documents may not be a big job, but it's necessary. In tasks involving large amounts of money, even small mistakes aren't tolerated. I think someone has to do it. I don't know how it was at his previous branch, but was there really no one doing back office work? I almost retorted that, but it felt too bothersome. So I just responded nonchalantly, "Is that so?" and forced a wry smile. Susan, who was anxiously watching, seemed pitiful. I thought if I let it slide, Mark would just leave, but for some reason, he stayed and seemed to be contemplating. Then, with a decisive nod as if having made up his mind, Mark started speaking to no one in particular.
Decided, starting tomorrow, this branch will undergo a reform.
The next day, true to his word, Mark began implementing reforms at the branch. First, he replaced almost all the equipment in the office with new ones. I wondered where the budget for that came from. Then, he increased the workload of the younger and mid-level employees, especially at the front desk. The clerical tasks that used to be sent to the back office were now less frequently assigned to me. Thanks to this, the peak-age employees who were already busy seemed even busier than before.
Once I achieve the reform of this branch, its sales will increase even more. This will benefit all the employees, and I'll climb higher too.
Mark was overheard saying this excitedly to the younger employees. In reality, since his arrival, the young employees' sales performance had improved slightly. Maybe it's the result of Mark's Spartan-style leadership. As for me, watching Mark and the young employees, I thought to myself, being young is incredible, as if it didn't concern me. So, I never imagined that this reform would turn against me. One day, Mark called me to his office. I was surprised as he hadn't spoken to me since his first day. "Do you need something?"
Yeah, I'll keep it short since I'm busy.
He said that as he thrusted a piece of paper at me.
With the branch manager's authority, I'm terminating your employment, effective today. Thank you for your hard work until now.
"Yes," I responded, tilting my head reflexively in confusion. Mark's loud voice meant that other nearby employees could hear my sudden termination notice. The surroundings began to buzz with whispers. I thought I had misheard, but the document clearly stated it was a termination notice.
You'll be compensated for your services accordingly. We'll handle the difficult procedures, so please pack your belongings and leave.
Mark spoke rapidly, then turned away to return to his work. I was utterly confused, so I confronted him. "Wait a minute, I don't understand why I'm being fired. Have I done something detrimental to this branch?" Despite my stern questioning, Mark didn't look at me and said,
We'll properly offer you a retirement package.
"That's not what I'm talking about. I'm asking if I violated any employment rules or made any major mistakes. This is wrongful termination." Mark sighed wearily and finally turned to face me.
You're violating your duty of dedication to your job. Bank officers and employees must be aware of their public mission, conduct their duties with integrity, and strive for smooth processing. That's in the regulations.
How am I violating that? Please be specific.
This is tiresome. You're not keeping up with the new equipment and systems, still using the old ones, causing delays in work. Don't you see?
Mark ranted impatiently. Have I ever delayed any work deadlines? I don't think I've caused any delays in work.
It's wasteful how young employees have to teach you to use the new equipment or wait for your verification on everything. It's hindering smooth operations.
That's an outrageous accusation. Anger seeping in my voice, Mark clicked his tongue and stepped closer, intimidatingly looking down at me.
You're in the way. You are.
Mark said that, almost spitting the words out.
While other employees are bustling around, you're just lounging at your desk, doing menial work that anyone could do, sitting back after finishing such trivial tasks. It's irritating to watch.
Mark, not even trying to hide his malice anymore, was unreservedly harsh in his words, despite speaking to someone older than himself. I'm neither lounging nor sitting back arrogantly, so basically, you want to fire me not because I'm a detriment to the branch, but simply because you're annoyed with me. I found myself responding calmly, even in the face of Mark's irrational logic.
Think whatever you want. Layoffs for staff restructuring aren't uncommon. If you're gone, we can hire more competent, younger employees at the right time.
Mark responded with a snort.
Excuse me, but I think a dismissal without a rational reason counts as an abuse of managerial power. Besides, the back office work, which was Robert's responsibility, was a task assigned by the previous branch manager and was supposed to continue this fiscal year.
Susan, who had been anxiously observing our argument, interjected timidly. Following her, other employees started murmuring in agreement, whispering, "That's right, it's an abuse of power."
Then, from this very moment, back office work is abolished.
Mark shouted out loud, not caring who was watching. Thankfully, it was after business hours, and no customers were around.
I'm the branch manager now. The previous one might have tolerated it, but I don't need incompetence in my branch. If anyone else objects, you're fired too. There are plenty of replacements.
The other employees quickly averted their eyes. But only Susan kept looking at Mark, albeit shrunken in fear. If this goes on, Susan will be his next target. Realizing this, I took a deep breath and, with a calm smile, said, "Understood. If the task is being abolished, I accept the dismissal." Everyone, including the surrounding employees and Mark, were momentarily stunned by my sudden acceptance of the order. However, let me give you one piece of advice. Everything you've said and our entire conversation has been heard by other employees. Everything. So, please make sure you have no regrets.
Ah, regrets? What are you talking about? It's good that you understand. I'm really relieved that you're taking it so well.
That was the end of our conversation. I packed my things that day and completed the minimal handover. It was extremely disappointing to leave the bank I had worked at for over 20 years in such a manner. But as I was leaving, the employees I had worked with for years expressed their sadness at my departure. Some even shed tears. Despite their pleas for me to reconsider, I replied, "I appreciate your sentiments," and went home. A week passed. With no job to go to and no need to wake up early, my sleep schedule was irregular. One day, I woke up around 10 a.m. Picking up my phone, I noticed dozens of missed call notifications. All of them were from the bank I had been dismissed from a week ago. What's this about? I wondered, but before I could ponder further, the phone rang again. Reluctantly, I answered the phone only to be immediately greeted by a familiar shouting voice asking, "What in the world is going on?" So loud. "Is that you, manager? What's this all about?"
What do you mean? What have you done? Tell me the truth.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Start from the beginning. As I asked for an explanation, Mark began to tell me about what had happened over the past week. A few days after I left, major clients started canceling their accounts. The internal back office operations were on the brink of collapse, barely functioning. Throughout his explanation, Mark sounded panicked, but honestly, I couldn't care less. That's why I warned you. I muttered, astounded. Back when I was a newbie at the bank's counter, lacking confidence in my abilities, I spared no effort to improve my communication and interpersonal skills. As a result, I could handle even the most difficult customers or explain complex issues without trouble. The customers I occasionally served in my 50s were all long-time clients who relied on me. They trusted me more than any other employee for my clear and concise explanations. Among them were many of Mark's so-called major clients. Wealthy people are cautious with their money. They don't entrust their assets to a bank with trustworthy people. That's why I always prioritize trust with clients. In just 1 week, he managed to ruin the trust I built over 20 years. I was beyond anger or sadness. I was just dumbfounded. I don't know why all the major clients left at once, but what do you mean by back office work on the brink of collapse? Isn't it easy and leisurely work that anyone can do? I retorted with a rare touch of sarcasm, mirroring the words Mark had previously used to me. I know all too well that back office work isn't as easy as it was made out to be. I was determined to let him know. As I approached retirement, turning 50, I had moved away from the front desk operations to handle nearly all the processing tasks that other employees couldn't manage. Each task, though simple on its own, amounted to a tremendous volume of work, taking as much time and effort as the front desk duties. Spending all day with numbers and documents is more tiring than one might think, and many give up after a few days. Living alone with no particular hobbies, finding joy solely in work and constantly learning new things, perhaps I was an exception. Regardless, I've always believed there's no such thing as an idle task in a bank.
How pretentious! You must have bad-mouthed our branch to your clients out of spite.
Absolutely not. As a professional, I would never say anything that could damage the branch's reputation for personal reasons. I merely sent thank you letters to the clients who had relied on me for years. I had been in the process of handing over my clients to younger employees like Susan. When clients visited the bank, I would sometimes appear to assure them, "Please trust them with your business after my retirement." When Mark ordered my dismissal, I wrote personalized farewell letters to each client, explaining the reason for my departure. I was dismissed for a rational reason, wasn't I? For neglecting my duty of dedication to work. I simply informed the clients of this and apologized.
What? So that's why the clients are all saying they need to reconsider their association with us. You shouldn't have interfered.
The content of my apology for my own negligence doesn't violate any duty of confidentiality or reputation maintenance. Informing them of my retirement and my successors seems only natural. It may sound inappropriate, but I was really pleased that many clients were angered by the unfair treatment I had received. Perhaps they thought someone like me could never violate my duty of dedication to work. It felt like validation for my earnest efforts.
Just come back immediately. You have to take responsibility for this mess.
What are you talking about? You dismissed me a week ago. I'm no longer an employee there. Instead of wasting time on this pointless conversation, why don't you get back to your work?
That dismissal notice was fake. You're still an employee here. consider the past week as paid leave and return to work immediately.
Mark, in his arrogance, was then confessing to document forgery. I was almost speechless at his shameless and hysterical behavior. "You've been quite loud. Isn't it business hours? Aren't you alarming the customers? As a bank employee, shouldn't you refrain from such behavior?" I tried to remain as calm as possible. After a moment of silence, Mark's voice softened.
Please, just come to the bank. I'm begging you.
Later, I visited the bank as requested. In the manager's office, Mark was joined by senior bank executives. Mark looked haggard, a shadow of his former self. He was likely reprimanded by the higher-ups. First, I received apologies from all the senior executives present. Unanimously, they said, "We want you to come back. I appreciate your trust, but I can't work under a manager who casually engages in wrongful dismissal and document forgery."
Understood. So, if the branch manager changes, would that resolve the issue?
Just as I was about to agree, Mark crushed over to me and deeply apologized.
Robert, please, I didn't realize you handled so many major clients. I apologize for my rude behavior. Please don't let me be fired.
Despite his change in attitude, Mark's volume and intensity remained high.
Manager, please a bit quieter. Your voice can be heard from the client area.
As the office door opened, Susan entered with tea, accompanied by one of my longtime major clients, Wilson from Wilson Real Estate.
Robert, Susan always speaks highly of you.
I apologize for the disturbance. He greeted me with a polite nod. He is my longest-serving client and also the father of the bank employee, Susan.
I've heard about the situation from Susan. I'm sorry for what you've been through. This prompted me to rethink where I keep my assets. I'm here to handle some procedures with Susan.
It seemed Wilson was here to close his accounts. It was regrettable to lose such a long-standing client, but it was understandable.
However, I overheard that if the manager changes, you might return. If that's true, I'd be confident in entrusting my assets to you again.
Whether Wilson's words influenced the decision isn't clear, but ultimately, Mark was promptly dismissed. Mark was confronted with a genuine dismissal notice, not a forged one. As far as I was concerned, his future was none of my business. With his banking experience, I thought he wouldn't struggle to find another job, but it turned out not to be so easy. Wilson, a prominent client, had accounts at various banks around the area and, under the guise of casual conversation, spread the word about Mark's actions. Mark became blacklisted in the banking community, being rejected for employment everywhere he went.
A client isn't bound by confidentiality.
Susan casually remarked, echoing your father's words, which I found a bit intimidating. I heard through the grapevine that Mark is now getting by with part-time jobs. I sent greeting cards to my clients, explaining my return to the bank. Even those who had closed their accounts upon my dismissal quickly reopened them when they heard of my comeback. This experience taught me the importance of transitioning responsibilities to others. I'm now actively mentoring the younger employees. They are all eager to learn and take responsibility. It's incredibly fulfilling to still be needed and able to contribute at over 50. With the new goal of nurturing the next generation of bankers, I'm experiencing exciting days, youthful enthusiasm notwithstanding.
Hey old man, this floor is for confidential stuff, no outsiders. Isn't your cleaning company's office downstairs? Go on, get
These young employees are so bold now. I just thought to myself, even if a nearly 60-year-old man on the verge of retirement suddenly shows up at the headquarters, it's no surprise the young staff don't recognize who I am. My original appearance doesn't matter. I'm just here to do my job. I'm John Smith, in my late 50s. For an average salaryman, approaching 60 years old typically means nearing retirement. The company I admire develops online games. It started as a tiny room with just 2 computers and 2 people. That small company has now grown into a towering skyscraper as its headquarters, with the top floor shining so bright it's almost blinding. Called back for work, I was concerned if I could fit in among the many young employees who joined in my absence. I'm sorry. I wasn't blocking the entrance. I was just standing off to the side, out of the way. The path was wide enough for people to pass by. Although my pleasant morning was somewhat disturbed, I politely nodded to the man and stepped aside.
Country hick. Don't just stand there like an idiot.
He spat out as he passed by, clicking his tongue loud enough for me to hear. I then entered the company building using the employee badge I had prepared in advance. I think the development department is this way. Not usually visiting the headquarters, I found myself lost in a building filled with similar-looking rooms. Then, I saw the man who had insulted me at the entrance. Noticing my gaze, he quickly recognized me and said,
Hey, you. This floor is for confidential work. No outsiders allowed. The janitorial office is in the basement. Go there, now.
The man probably thought I was a janitor by looking at my clothes. He made a dismissive gesture with his hand. Oh, no, you've got it wrong. I'm not a.
I'm busy here. Just go do your cleaning job.
He interrupted, not bothering to listen. He glared at me, making sure I left the floor. My apologies. My outfit today was a casual jacket and a plaid shirt. No tie, which probably made him think I wasn't an employee of this company. Resigned, I decided to move as he instructed. When I tried to use the elevator, he quickly grabbed my hand off the floor button.
Hey, you. This isn't your personal elevator. Use the stairs,
he said with a smirk. I felt irritated at his relentless mockery, but showing anger would just play into his hands. I forced a smile and replied, You're right, my mistake. I said that, and then I checked the man's employee badge. It had Mark Brown written on it. Mark, huh, I'll remember that. I thought I'm jerk, but I gonna keep remember his name and face, and committed to taking the stairs. I realized that with my age, descending so many floors was quite a task. The first few steps felt like good exercise, but I quickly started panting. I stealthily stepped out into the hallway, finding myself in the cafeteria. This is a relief. I'll take a break and then make a call. I ordered an iced coffee and drank half of it in one go, just as my phone rang. Hello, this is John.
Hey, where are you? I've been waiting for your call. When you get to the station, let me know. I'll send the car to pick you up.
Oh, right now I'm.
Where are you now?
I started to respond but stopped myself. Since it was a rare visit to the headquarters, I thought it'd be good to see what the place was like now and who was working there. I pretended I hadn't arrived yet. Oh, sorry, I haven't reached the station yet. I'll be there soon and we'll call you back. Luckily, it had been 20 years since I last visited the headquarters. With many young employees like Mark, there weren't many who knew me. I felt like a child playing hide and seek in the large building. If I wandered around too conspicuously, I might get treated like a suspicious person by someone like Mark. I decided to keep a low profile. Then, a woman arrived. She seemed to have some business with the chef in the cafeteria. From her attire and demeanor, she appeared to be a woman in her late 30s. Wearing a suit perfectly, she looked like a CEO's secretary, perhaps. Carrying a planner and a tablet, she had the air of a competent professional. She walked towards the chef, her heels clicking, and said,
"Good morning. We have an important guest for the CEO today, so please prepare 2 portions of the usual lunch."
To me, usually in the countryside, she seemed like someone out of a TV drama. I thought to myself, the CEO sure knows how to pick people as I watch her. She noticed my gaze and looked back. After a moment of puzzlement, she nodded politely and greeted me.
"Good morning, sir. May I help you with anything?"
She asked me that probably because I looked uneasy. "Good morning. No, I'm just taking a break before work. Please, don't mind me." Even if told not to worry, seeing an unfamiliar face in the office would naturally raise concern. Although the cafeteria is open to everyone, she was looking at me as if I were a suspicious person. After getting off the elevator, Sharon explained the development department is at the end of this floor, and then he returned to his own workplace. I couldn't just boldly enter a room as a stranger, so I looked around cautiously. Then, I heard a loud voice from a meeting room.
"Mark, again. Please, enough of this. You'll get caught someday."
I quietly moved closer to eavesdrop. I decided to move quietly so as not to get caught and listen in on the conversation.
Do you even know who you're talking to? I could have you thrown out of the development department in no time.
Peeking into the room, I saw Mark, the same man who had complained to me earlier. Was he a higher-up capable of firing people? I wondered about the HR people who hired someone like him. Maybe he had some executive connections. Suddenly, Mark came to where I was hiding, and our eyes met.
Hey, cleaner, you're still here. This area is off limits to outsiders. Are you a newbie? Ha! Then go get me a coffee. Now, hurry up.
Mark, probably embarrassed to be seen in that situation, yelled at me with visible irritation. "I'm sorry for the disturbance. Understood?" I said, bowing repeatedly. Mark seemed somewhat satisfied and quickly left. Then, the man left in the room approached me.
"Are you all right? Really, that guy is rough."
"Thank you. It's my fault for eavesdropping. I hope I'm not being rude, but did he take something important from you?" The man looked troubled, having been witnessed in an unpleasant situation, but after a few seconds, he spoke to me.
"That guy, he's the son or relative of someone important in HR. That's why, despite being incapable in development, he was assigned to this department. He always takes others' ideas and pretends to work."
That's a tough situation. Is it because of his connections in HR?
"Please keep this between us."
He requested, placing his index finger to his lips in a shush gesture. Of course, I won't tell anyone. But doesn't it frustrate you, having your ideas taken? Don't you have a passion for the things you develop? I couldn't help but ask passionately.
"It does upset me. But if I refuse, I might get kicked out of development. I love my job, but there's a limit. That's why I've planted a bug in the current data. I can fix it, but Mark definitely can't. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
He spoke with a hint of annoyance. Won't Mark try to get back at you? I hate to believe that such childish adults exist.
Well, when that time comes, it comes. Working in a place where you can't do your job properly won't produce anything good. I've spoken too much to a stranger. Sorry, I need to get back to work.
Can I get your name before you go?
It's Thomas. And don't worry about the coffee. I'll buy it for him.
No, it's my responsibility. You go back to your work.
All right, thanks.
Thomas smiled brightly, waved at me, and returned to his work. After watching him go, I took out the notepad I had received from Sharon. Sharon, it's John.
Yes, how can I assist you?
Sharon responded immediately after the phone rang. I'm really sorry to bother you, but could you bring a coffee to the development room?
Certainly. How many cups?
Just one, please. After hanging up, I pondered the reason I was called to the headquarters after 20 years. Maybe he had some inkling of the current situation. That's why he summoned me to the headquarters now. I encouraged myself to meet his expectations and reached for the doorknob of the development room. As I opened the door and entered, Mark was standing in front, seemingly preparing to present data he must have taken from Thomas earlier. Unaware of my entry, Mark was intensely focused. A man, mistaking me for an outsider, approached and looked surprised to see me.
Joe.
I stopped him from calling my name and focused on Mark's presentation. As Mark was explaining the data, the screen suddenly went black with a loud mechanical noise. A few seconds later, when the screen lit up, photos of Mark slacking off at work started to play. Panicked, Mark didn't know how to stop the data and started sweating profusely. The photos showed various scenes, like Mark napping in a sloppy manner and hurling abuse at Thomas. He tried to hide the projector's display with his body, but the other employees were already snickering.
Hey, Mark. It's your data. Stop it now, his boss commanded.
Mark, looking almost tearful, replied.
Yes, that's strange.
He fumbled with the computer, but unable to stop it, he just hit it roughly.
Hey, Thomas, you made this, right? Stop it now.
In his panic, Mark inadvertently revealed to everyone in the development department that it was Thomas's data.
You're using someone else's data. What kind of person does that, Thomas? Please stop it.
The department had instructed after hearing this. Mark, face red with embarrassment, approached Thomas.
Thomas, this is your doing, isn't it?
Forgetting there were others around, Mark grabbed Thomas' collar and confronted him. Just as he seemed about to swing his right hand, I spoke up. Mark, stop this disgraceful behavior. Let go of Thomas. Everyone in the room turned to me with surprised expressions. Mark, whose name I had called, looked most shocked. Then, redirecting his anger towards me, he yelled,
Hey, old man, don't you dare order me around. You're just a newbie. Where's the coffee?
Before Mark could lash out at me, the development department had intervened.
Do you even know who you're talking to?
Boss, this old guy is new here, right? What is HR thinking, hiring someone like him?
The department head sighed loudly. Ignoring Mark's question, the department head came to me and apologized profusely.
I am terribly sorry for this unsightly scene and rude behavior, Mr. John. Did you perhaps hear about this from the CEO?
Well, I hadn't heard the details, but I had a feeling about what was going on. Just then, Sharon appeared with a single cup of coffee.
Excuse me?
She said, entering the room and handing me the coffee. Chairman, sorry to keep you waiting. Sharon, sorry to ask you to do this. Thank you. I took the coffee from Sharon and handed it to Mark. Here you go, Mark. Mark, now completely deflated, was visibly shaken.
The chairman, you're not a newbie. Oh, thank you for the coffee.
Seeing this, the other employees in the room were also disturbed. Thomas seemed flustered as well. Then the CEO arrived in a hurry. It appeared that Sharon had contacted him after seeing what was happening. Upon entering, he saw me and exclaimed,
John,
"Oh, sorry about this."
Sharon told me, and I was shocked. You're already inside the company, aren't you? So, what exactly happened?
In fact, I am the brother of the company's president, Alan Smith, and nominally the chairman. Understandably, young employees who hadn't seen the chairman who had been absent from headquarters for 20 years wouldn't recognize me, leading to this commotion. Alan, I've taken a look around the development department, and there are quite a few issues.
Really? You figured it out already? So, John, I have a favor to ask. Could you come back to the headquarters?
I was baffled by the CEO bowing deeply to me. In the past, as brothers who started the company together, I gradually demanded perfection from the growing number of employees, disrupting the harmony in the company. Unable to handle the stress of failure, I often shouted at the staff and made them work late. I was rumored to be a demon named John behind my back. This led to stressed employees losing their motivation to create good products, and the company atmosphere became tense. Seeing Alan, always caught between me and the company, trying to mediate, I suggested stepping away myself. Afterward, I retreated to the countryside, running a small programming school for kids. Before I knew it, Alan had grown the company we started together substantially on his own. He must have had the knack for management. Standing in front of the company building, I had always thought from the bottom of my heart that my decision to step back then was the right one. Though I was surprised to find myself listed as the chairman. By the way, Mark was saying earlier, "I'll kick you out of the development department if you oppose me." What was that about?
That's
Mark, who had mistaken me for a cleaner and was now shocked to learn I was the president's brother, was trembling.
That was just a rumor I spread. I thought if people believed I was related to someone important in HR, they'd treat me better.
Well, you're incredible. You have the talent to make people believe lies. It would be great if you could use that talent for something more productive. I never meant to belittle Mark. Honestly, I did think his approach was quite childish. But I was truly impressed by his ability to make people believe in rumors.
Yes, I'm sorry,
said Mark, about to bow deeply in apology, but I stopped him. Don't apologize to me. You should be apologizing to Thomas, don't you think, after all the things you've done? Mark, looking like he was about to cry, turned to Thomas and bowed his head.
Thomas, I'm sorry for everything. I was just envious of your ability to come up with interesting ideas. I'm truly sorry for my actions.
Mark.
Watching this scene, Alan, the CEO, intervened.
So, John, how would you resolve this?
Alan looked at me with a scheming expression. All right, I got it. Mark, from now on, I will personally train you. And if you really feel sorry, start supporting Thomas's work.
Hey, I'm not being fired.
Mark, recalling his previous rude behavior, seemed prepared to be dismissed, but I didn't allow that. I love turning those who can't into those who can more than anything else. You're going to change, Mark. As I said this with a cheerful smile, the development department head, who remembered my past, murmured,
The Demon John is still around.
At Demon John,
Mark shrank back like a frightened puppy.
Even demons mellow with age over 20 years.
Said Alan, the CEO, laughing heartily as he left the development department.
Demon John, huh? Lucky you, Mark. Learn thoroughly. I want to learn from you too.
He found Mark's trembling funny but also expressed a desire to learn with him. I'm glad to hear you want to learn from me. Let's start then, Mark.
yes, sir.
Mark looked at me nervously. As a new member of the development team, I focused on training young talents. Mark was slowly transforming into a capable person, and Thomas had grown surprisingly fond of me. The development department now was filled with laughter, a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere 20 years ago. And here I am, enjoying company life after 20 years. Wondering if even demons soften with age. At nearly 60, I'm having the best time of my life. It's unlikely that Kevin's wife will be able to have children. In that sense, marrying an older woman really isn't a good idea.
That's what my direct boss, Smith, told me when I was 40 years old and had just started a new job at a company. I was shaking with anger and demanded he take back his words, but he didn't even realize his blunder. Worse yet, at the founding anniversary party, both he and his wife insulted me and my wife.
Oh my, is this Kevin's mom?
I thought she was his mother.
Amidst a small crowd that had gathered around us and fell silent, the CEO came running over with a pale face.
Never thought I'd see this happen here.
I'm Kevin, 40 years old. I'm working as a medical equipment service engineer at one of the leading companies in the industry. It's my first year here, after being hired mid-career last year. I've decided to make a long-term commitment to this company, so I'm giving it my all every day. There's a tendency to think it's late to start a new job at 40. Perhaps because of this, Smith seemed displeased with me from day one.
Even with engineering experience, moving jobs at your age, did you make some big mistake at your previous job? Or do you plan to quit here soon too?
I guess it's understandable for him to think that way at first. I worked as an engineer in another company until my late 20s. But then, I traveled abroad until I was 39, last year. Initially, I went on a working holiday to Canada, where my sister, Emma, had moved after getting married. From there, I spent about 10 years moving every few years to places like Africa and the Middle East. As part of Doctors Without Borders, my role there was as a logistician. I was responsible for procuring and managing the supplies and equipment needed for aid. This includes ensuring patient transport and securing routes for it. I was a non-medical staff member working alongside doctors. Going to Canada for a working holiday was supposed to be a one-year thing, just wanting to see the world while I was young. After working as an engineer in the US for over 5 years, I couldn't imagine spending my whole life at that company. And my first overseas experience was more shocking than I had anticipated. It was not as peaceful and safe as the US, so I always had to be extra careful in everything. I couldn't casually walk around at night, and if I bought expired food, it was my own fault for not checking. I always had to have my own opinion and assert it when talking to someone, and the disparities in wealth that I didn't feel in the US were blatantly apparent in everyday life. Still, I ended up loving the necessity of living seriously overseas. Using my abilities to their fullest and living each day was enjoyable for me. I regretted not experiencing life abroad earlier, like Emma. She went to Canada for college, got a job there, and married a local. She even said to me,
"Kevin, you're just like me. You'd thrive more living abroad than in the comfortable life in the US. Why don't you come back after your working holiday ends?"
And I truly felt the same. So, after safely spending a year and returning to the US, I started preparing to go back to Canada while doing part-time jobs. That's when I found a job listing that would determine the rest of my life. It was a recruitment ad for Doctors Without Borders staff. It was a job where I could live helping people in parts of the world where medical care doesn't reach. I could dedicate my labor to those suffering from conflict, natural disasters, poverty, etc. They were hiring electricians, architects, and even medical equipment service engineers. All of these required practical experience. Having the work experience as an engineer, I filled out the application and applied immediately. During the interview, they asked me in detail about my desire to join. I want to support healthcare with what I can do. I aim to use all my communication skills, physical strength, and willpower for the benefit of others. I passionately made my case, and I was accepted. After that, I registered as dispatch staff and participated in training within the country. There was more than half a year until training abroad, so I worked part-time throughout that period. My first dispatch was to the Middle East and Africa. In the town where I was sent, there was a shortage of vaccines for infectious diseases, and many people became seriously ill with diseases that could be easily treated with a quick visit to the hospital in the US. The medical team's mission was to vaccinate all the children in the town center. I was in charge of managing the vaccine transport vehicles and drivers. However, simply transporting vaccines was very difficult in that town. The road conditions were terrible, and it was hard to manage the temperature of the vaccines under the scorching sun. Vaccines that were finally delivered safely would be ruined when the town's power supply was cut off. Interactions with drivers were also difficult, requiring more than just English, leading to misunderstandings and even arguments. But when we finally completed the mission, I was filled with a sense of happiness. The solidarity with the doctors, staff, local people, and patients I worked with was as an irreplaceable sense of accomplishment. By then, nearly in my 30s, I had forgotten about returning to my former company or the US, and decided to make this job my career. Over the next 10 years, I grew not only as an engineer, but also as a general logistician, a staff leader capable of organizing dispatch staff. There were many dangers, and I even fell seriously ill myself, but I felt like I had found my true calling. Being single and unattached I somewhat assumed I'd continue to perform medical missions and live this way indefinitely. That was until last year, when I met a woman and, fortunately, ended up getting married. Her name is Mary, and she works as a doctor with Doctors Without Borders. Mary and I worked hard together on the same team and at some point realized we were attracted to each other. Mary confessed her feelings for me, but she never talked about going beyond that.
I'm 10 years older than you.
At the time, Mary was 49, 10 years my senior at 39. She always expressed the uneasy feelings she had about this. Mary had been working in this job longer than me, so she should know that age difference doesn't matter. There are couples with significant age differences abroad, and it's not unusual to see women older than their partners. It might stand out in the US, but both Mary and I are more accustomed to the sensibilities abroad, so I thought age shouldn't matter. To me, Mary was not only admirable as a doctor, but also beautiful and dignified as a woman, and she was an important presence as my beloved partner. I'm serious about wanting to marry you, Mary. I had expressed this clearly several times. However, Mary wouldn't say yes. So, I wondered if there was some other reason, but I didn't press further. Then one day, an emergency mission started in the medical corps. It was in a region engulfed in conflict, and the hospital was in danger. The mission was to safely transport pregnant women waiting to give birth to another region. I was running around securing enough gasoline for the round-trip transport. After successfully transporting everyone to the other hospital, I realized Mary hadn't arrived at the new hospital. When I asked the local staff, they told me Mary is still at the previous hospital. She said she wouldn't be returning for a while. This was despite the fact that the previous hospital was at risk of getting caught in the conflict. I rode a bike tens of kilometers back to the previous hospital. There, I found Mary trying hard to make the scared little children laugh. They were the siblings of the other children who had been transported. Because we could only transport a minimum number of people, we had no choice but to leave the older siblings behind. Mary stayed behind, knowing the risks, to encourage them. If Mary was going to stay, I thought I should too. Mary thanked me, with a troubled smile. That night, after the children had fallen asleep, Mary shared her story.
I have an older sister, Maggie. When we were kids, I was sickly, so my parents always worried about me more than her. I think she must have felt lonely. Of course, those in weaker positions or environments should be helped first. But in doing so, others are sacrificed. These children being separated from their mothers or siblings to be born must feel incredibly helpless. I left home and the US as soon as I got my medical license. I'm healthy now, so I hoped my parents would start worrying about Maggie. I wonder if they're all getting along and healthy. I haven't been back in so long.
Listening to Mary, I felt I understood the reason for her remarkable character. Her strong sense of self-sacrifice stemmed from her concern for Maggie from a young age. She probably feels she shouldn't be happier than Maggie. If she can't give herself happiness, then I thought I should give it to her. The next day, as a general logistician, I checked the budget and figured out a way to take the remaining children to the new hospital, and somehow managed to execute it. With the children no longer a concern, Mary moved to the new hospital as well. There, I proposed to her again. For every sacrifice you make, Mary, I'll work even harder to protect you. Finally, with tears in her eyes, Mary said yes. When it came to our wedding, we didn't have a ceremony or party. Instead, we distributed food to the impoverished. Everyone wished us congratulations, and we felt truly happy. Afterwards, I decided to return to the US alone for work to support Mary. It's rare for both of us to stay in the same region, and we're often in places without internet access. So, I returned to the US to always be reachable and to have a base for Mary to return to whenever she needed. That's why I re-entered the workforce as an engineer. My re-employment was facilitated by several companies Mary had connections with around the world, so despite being 40, they all were positive about interviewing me. I chose this leading medical device manufacturer because they value the work of Doctors Without Borders and even have a department dedicated to it. The company needed my experience and wanted me to contribute immediately. I've done my best to meet their expectations over the past year. Initially, there were barriers with colleagues and superiors, but gradually, we've warmed up to each other, and now we're able to cooperate well. Except, I still can't seem to get along with Smith.
Kevin, I heard you've been living apart from your wife since you got married. Are you sure it's not some kind of romance scam?
Smith may be a manager in title, but he doesn't understand anything about Doctors Without Borders. Apparently, he has a company executive in his family, which makes him more of a figurehead manager. He doesn't seem busy with important work, so he's always more free than other employees. That's probably why he's annoyingly curious about my family situation. We met, fell in love, and got married, so it's definitely not a romance scam. No matter how I respond, Smith tries to dig deeper.
But your wife is much older, right? And a doctor too. I see no reason why she'd choose you. I can't see any love there, can you?
Well, you don't have to worry about us. There's love. Smith looked bored with my response and left. As I sighed and started on the backlog of paperwork, Anna from the next desk started talking to me.
Kevin, did you know Smith's wife is much younger? He's about 50, and she's around 30, but he goes around calling other people old. How much younger does he like them?
Anna, a 23-year-old girl at the office, often shares gossip. I see. You get involved with him a lot too, huh? I replied, and Anna made a disgusted face.
I think older people are fine, but someone like Smith is creepy. It's like he's okay with anyone, as long as they're young. It's not about age, it's the inside that should matter.
I found myself in full agreement with Anna's perspective. It doesn't matter how old Mary is. I love her for who she is. Last night, Mary sent me her cheerful picture. Currently, she's in the Middle East, caring for malnourished children at a refugee camp. In the picture, Mary was smiling, surrounded by local kids hugging her. Though the children were thin, the vitality in their eyes suggested that Mary's efforts were successful. I'm glad. Mary, embracing many children, looked like a mother to them. It reminded me of something Mary had said before.
I consider myself a second mother to the children I've helped. Even if I don't have my own children, I feel like I have children all over the world.
I remember nodding in agreement. Yell, yell. I opened the email to glance at the picture once more. Mary is indeed a wonderful person.
Oh, sorry.
Anna's apology snapped me back to reality. What's up? Sorry.
Oh, no, it's that photo. Is that your wife by any chance? I'm sorry for peeking.
Anna pointed at my computer screen. No. It's my fault for opening personal emails at work. Yes, that's my wife. Opening personal emails on the computer during work, that's me. It's been a full year since we've seen each other, and truth be told, I'm feeling quite lonely.
Wow, your wife has such a nice smile. This is without makeup, right? She's naturally beautiful, and above all, it's a smile that comes from the heart.
I felt genuinely happy when Anna complimented Mary. After watching Anna look at the photo for a while, I closed my laptop, saying, "All right, back to work. No matter how lonely I get, work is work. If I don't work hard in the US, I won't be able to support Mary if something happens to her." I switched gears and focused on my job. A few days later, when I arrived at the office, there was a photo on my desk. I didn't know who it was, but it showed a young mother and her small child. As I was wondering about it, Smith came rushing over.
Morning, Kevin. That's a photo of my wife and child. It turned out so well that I thought I'd give one to everyone in the department.
So, this was Smith's wife. Just as the rumors said, there's a significant age difference. Your wife is beautiful, and your child is adorable. Though I thought to myself that Smith was undeserving of such beauty.
Right. My wife used to be a model after all. Please, feel free to display it on your desk. Since you can expect children from your wife, it's also a reason not to marry someone older, right?
What? I was never more taken aback by Smith's words. Excuse me, Smith. Could you please take back what you just said? Smith looked puzzled and replied,
Huh? I didn't say anything strange. Your wife is beyond the age of having children. You should have married someone younger, just stating the obvious.
My hands trembled. I was so angry, I felt like hitting Smith for his incredibly rude remarks. How can you say such a thing, even if we don't have children? That's when Annie intervened.
Smith, that's power harassment. It's sexual harassment and even moral harassment.
I looked at Anna. She seemed angry as well.
Huh? What are you talking about? How is that harassment? Stop accusing me of nonsense. Kevin, Anna, do you dare to take such a defiant attitude, knowing my relative is in the upper management?
I couldn't afford to lose my job, but I couldn't let Smith's remarks slide. As I pondered what to do, Anna boldly responded,
I don't mind, even if it means a transfer or demotion. But please apologize to Kevin. You made disrespectful comments about him and his wife.
I was amazed by Anna's bravery and appalled by Smith's ignorance. Even after Anna's confrontation, Smith said,
Having children is natural when you're married. It's your fault for marrying someone who can't have them. I've done nothing wrong to apologize for. Enough. Give me back the photo. What a terrible morning.
Smith snatched the photo from us and walked away. I repeatedly thanked and apologized to Anna, who was still fuming. I was grateful she got angry on my behalf. A month passed. Smith blatantly ignored both Anna and me. It didn't bother us since it didn't affect our work. However, Smith suddenly approached my desk after a month. He was smiling unusually.
Kevin, about next month's founding anniversary party. It seems that employees with spouses are expected to attend with their partners.
I remembered seeing something about the anniversary party in the company newsletter. Well, I thought attending the party as a couple was the formal expectation, but Mary probably couldn't make it. My wife is too busy with work to attend together. Smith sneered and said,
Employees who are eager for promotion make arrangements to come with their spouses. If you're not interested in that, then it can't be helped. But surely, you're not saying you can show your wife to others, are you?
I felt like getting angry with Smith again for the first time in a month. However, before I could get angry, Smith hummed a tune and went back to his desk.
Don't worry about it. Your wife is doing important work.
Anna whispered to me in support. I thought she was right. But that night, I received surprising news from Mary. She would be coming home temporarily in 2 weeks. Her current project had just finished, and there would be a month before her next deployment. I was overjoyed. Finally, I could meet Mary. It was for moments like this that I had made a place for us in the U.S. Mary and I excitedly discussed over the phone where we would go and what we would eat when she returned. During the conversation, I also mentioned the founding anniversary party. Mary said, "I will definitely accompany you, Kevin. I'm so happy to have such an opportunity." So, we decided to attend the party together as a couple. 2 weeks later, the long-awaited reunion day arrived. We spent every day feeling incredibly happy. It was our first time living together since getting married. Our time together as newlyweds was rosy. Then came the day of the founding anniversary party. Mary rented a classy dress from a rental room. The dress suited her well. However, her skin and hair were a bit rough from the sun in Africa, so she decided to keep her makeup minimal and light. As we entered the party hall at the fancy hotel, about half of the employees were there with their spouses. I proudly stood by Mary's side, but she seemed a bit uncomfortable.
Do I look all right? I feel like I'm being stared at.
I assured her, "You look great," though she seemed a bit self-conscious. Then Smith and his wife appeared.
Kevin, let me introduce you to my wife, Emily. Isn't she beautiful?
Smith's wife, indeed a former model, was more stunning than anyone else in the room. I began to introduce Mary. Smith has always been very supportive. "This is my wife, Mary." Before I could finish, Smith cut me off and started speaking loudly.
"Oh my, is this Kevin's mother?"
His loud remark drew a crowd. I retorted loudly, "No, this is my wife, Mary." As the crowd gathered around us and fell silent, Emily spoke next.
Wife? I thought she's your mother.
Her beautiful face twisted in mockery. Smith added,
"Right. Anyone would think she's the mother. With such light makeup and messy hair. Did you bring your parents to the party to stand out, Kevin?"
Mary covered her face. I detested the meanness of Smith and his wife. The other employees around us were whispering among themselves.
Your mother seems upset, Kevin. Perhaps you should take her to the exit.
Yo, why don't you go? You must be uncomfortable here.
I couldn't hold back any longer. Enough.
What?
I said she's my dear wife. If you continue to insult Mary, I can't forgive you, even if you're my boss or my boss wife. When I raised my voice, the Smith couple still sneered and said,
Can't forgive us, you say?
Oh, quite the bold statement for someone with no backing.
It was then. A middle-aged man made his way through the crowd and stood before us. With a pale face, he said,
Mary, is that you? Mary.
When Mary heard his voice, she looked up, surprised, and exclaimed,
Michael.
I was still trying to grasp the situation when a woman's voice followed.
Excuse me, pardon me, please let me through.
Following the man, a woman who looked strikingly like Mary came forward.
Mary, it really is you.
The middle-aged man, the woman resembling Mary, and Mary herself embraced each other, crying. I could only watch. Hearing Smith's trembling voice,
The CEO and his wife.
After a moment of crying, Mary introduced me to the two.
This is my husband, Kevin. He's a wonderful man.
Then she introduced them to me.
This lady is my twin sister, Maggie. And here is her husband, Michael, the CEO of this company.
It turned out her sister was named Maggie. Apparently, this medical equipment manufacturing company was founded by Mary and Maggie's grandfather. With only the twin sisters in Mary's generation, they needed a son-in-law to continue the company's legacy. And that was Michael, the middle-aged man. I was embarrassed not to recognize the face of my own company's CEO. The CEO had been treated like a son-in-law in the family from an early age, and it seemed he and Maggie were in mutual love. But Mary, thinking Maggie would give up her happiness for her, left home right after getting her medical license and never returned. The CEO and Maggie married and took over the family business, but always hoped for Mary's return. The three of them were always very close.
Mary always gives away her happiness to others, without thinking of herself. But having a wonderful partner and being able to meet like this again is fantastic. What a wonderful day.
Maggie cried with joy. And Mary cried happily with the same gesture. The CEO, smiling broadly, said to me,
Kevin, please take good care of Mary from now on.
I slowly nodded, and the CEO nodded back at me. Then he firmly glared at the Smiths and said,
Smith, you've said quite a bit to my dear sister-in-law. Your wife may be beautiful, but it seems she doesn't understand manners in such settings.
Smith shrank back, but Emily still glared at the CEO defiantly. It was clear, Emily was a very assertive woman.
Normally, if she's that old, you'd think she's the mother. What's wrong with that?
Despite Smith's attempts to stop her, Emily continued without admitting any fault.
Being beautiful is the most important thing for a woman. The most beautiful woman is the most respected. So, even if you're the president's wife, Maggie, I'm more important than you. Well, of course, I'm more important than Mary too.
I didn't know what life Emily had led, but I thought she had missed learning something crucial about life. Being physically beautiful is a stroke of luck. Being born into a good family or a country without hardships like the US is also luck. but I've met many people who aren't so fortunate. Those who don't have food to eat today, no water to drink, or no place for children to learn. People who spend their time and money helping others. I believe the most beautiful people are those with beautiful hearts. People who can laugh even when the future is uncertain, who rejoice in others' happiness as if it were their own, who share what they have if they have plenty, who can give up something important for others, and my wife is such a person. That's why I can't really think Emily is beautiful. Emily was still talking.
Hey, you always say it's a good opportunity. Tell him now. Mr. CEO, why don't you promote this man to an executive position soon? He has a relative in the executive seats, doesn't he?
At Emily's words, Smith finally hid his face and crouched down. The CEO heard this and said,
"What's this, Smith? Our company is supposed to forbid nepotism."
Then a man, who seemed to be related to Smith, stepped forward, trembling, and said,
"Oh, well, he's not going to be promoted."
Emily shouted in anger.
What?
As if bad things tend to pile up, another person came forward. It was Anna. Anna stood in front of Mary and greeted her.
Hi, Mary. My name is Anna. I'm always grateful to Kevin. I'm the CEO's daughter. I didn't want to use connections, so I've been working under my father's maiden name.
I didn't even know Anna was the CEO's daughter. Anna then turned to the CEO and said,
It's not just my opinion, but the whole department's. Smith has been harassing everyone in the department. I have recordings of it, so Dad, please listen later. And his position as a manager is lacking in competence.
Emily screamed like a banshee.
Don't you dare speak out, young lady. A father who listens to such things is no father at all. My man is the one fit to be the next CEO.
Then Anna, with a calm face, stood in front of Emily and said,
Your husband always comes to me because I'm young. There are plenty of young female employees he's harassed. I have recordings of that too. Maybe you'd like to listen.
Emily was speechless this time. With a crumbling face, she just looked at her husband. I was too overwhelmed by the flood of revelations to say anything, standing frozen. All I could hear was the pleasant classical music played on. Amid the awkward silence, Mary was the first to move. She approached Emily and gently patted her back. Then spoke softly to the Smith couple.
You're very beautiful. Smith surely treasures you very much. And you do too, right? You were just too worried about your husband and said too much. Why don't you talk it over and make up quickly?
Despite the nasty things said about her, Mary's ability to forgive appeared angelic to me. Even though she had every right to be the angriest, her kindness slowly brought back a sense of calm to the room. Some people came from the crowd to apologize to Mary. We're sorry for staring. You looked so much like the CEO's wife, and if we made you uncomfortable, we apologize. Other employees also praised Smith to the CEO. He has his good points in the department. It's easy going with him around. Even Emily said something surprisingly gracious to Smith. I've been too demanding on you, because you always listen. I just went too far. Sorry, don't hate me. I was once again impressed by Mary's pure energy. In projects, Mary's presence alone makes anxious children and adults feel reassured. Even in situations where there's no food for tomorrow, Her presence makes everything seem okay. Mary has everything: family background, money, good looks. But, even without all that, I think she has the most beautiful heart in the world. I resolved to live up to a wife like her. Thanks to Mary, the awkward party managed to recover, and we successfully celebrated the founding anniversary. After the party, we planned to go on a short trip with the remaining days of Mary's stay in the US, but I canceled it. I thought Mary should spend the remaining days with the CEO and Maggie. When I told her, Mary unusually insisted.
I was really looking forward to it.
I felt happy but firmly replied, "The CEO and Maggie were looking forward to seeing you more than I was. Honestly, I was really looking forward to the trip too. But we have a long life ahead together. I have plenty of time with you, Mary." So, giving a few days to the CEO and Maggie is nothing. I decided to give you happiness when I married you. Your happiness is my happiness. Mary thanked me profusely and enjoyed her remaining days with the CEO and her sister. I was invited several times, but frankly, as a mere rank-and-file employee, I didn't have the courage to spend private time with the CEO. Gradually, I too started to think it would be nice if I could join them. After Mary went back to conflict zones, there were changes in my department. Firstly, Smith suddenly started learning about Doctors Without Borders. The fact that he hadn't learned about it until then was abnormal, but no one pointed it out. We all quietly observed. Then Anna left the company. She decided to go back to college to pursue a career as a doctor.
I want to become a cool woman like Mary. Plus, my younger brother is there, so the company will be fine without me.
The CEO and Maggie also said they would support Anna in her decision. I thought the fearless and strong Anna would surely become a good doctor. On a day when a pleasant breeze was blowing, I looked up at the sky from the company's rooftop and said in my heart, "Mary, your influence is incredible. I'll work even harder."
Excuse me, have you ever heard of wire transfer scams?
The face of the bank employee was stern. He seemed concerned about me, an elderly man who wanted to withdraw a large sum of money, suspecting it might be a scam. While I appreciated his sense of justice, it put me in a bit of a bind. No matter how much I deny that it is not a scam because I need that money for work, he never listens to me. Finally, he said, "I'm terribly sorry, sir, but as of today, due to the manager's decision, our senior customers cannot use our services." He was clearly prejudiced against seniors, assuming they're all susceptible to scams. My wife silently observed his behavior from the side. Having reached the end of her patience, she began to laugh mischievously.
Hey, could you get in touch with the manager?
My name is John Smith. I'm 66 years old. I retired a few years ago and now live in New York City with my wife, Linda. Since retiring, I've been enjoying my second life. I stay busy with community volunteer work, such as helping ensure the safety of elementary school children in traffic, and sometimes managing the reception at local events. I'm also registered with a senior employment agency, so when I have time, I do some simple tasks. My days are fairly enjoyable.
Well, I'm off then.
Take care. My wife Linda, wearing a light pink jacket, left the house. Linda is a career woman, still working very energetically. Despite her busy schedule, She seems content with her fulfilling life. I can always tell how much she enjoys her work through her conversations. Recently, I've been looking forward to hearing about her work during dinner or on weekends. With my busy wife, I've taken on the household chores. Since I didn't have much opportunity to do it while I was working, I often failed at household chores like cooking, laundry, and cleaning at first. Initially, I really came to appreciate what homemakers do. By the way, we have a son and a daughter. Thankfully, both have their own families and have been blessed with children, so I have happily become a grandfather. Though our children are living a bit away from us, they often visit us with our grandchildren, not just during holidays. Spending ample time with my adorable grandkids, who run up to me saying "Grandpa," is always a healing experience. I've also taken up a new hobby recently. With plenty of time on my hands, I've started a small vegetable garden in our backyard. This home gardening is surprisingly productive. The satisfaction of harvesting what I've grown is immensely gratifying. But there's one issue. We often harvest more than we can eat, just the two of us. What should we do? For now, I'm thinking of trying to make some dried vegetables this week. Hopefully, it works out. We, both financially and time-wise comfortable, live happily doing the things we love. One day, we needed to go to the bank, so we decided to head out together. The closest branch was just a 10-minute walk from our house, so we decided to take a stroll there together. After walking for a few minutes, we could see the bank, but it seemed somewhat dim. As we got closer to the entrance, we realized it was closed off with shutters. Apparently, they were undergoing renovations. So, unfortunately, the bank was closed that day.
Oh dear, it's closed.
Linda said, looking up at the notice. Seems like it, but we need to go today. No choice but to head to the next town over.
Yes, I guess we have no choice.
Let's eat out while we're at it. It's good to have days like this once in a while. Just the two of us. We set off for another branch we usually don't visit, planning to dine out along the way. The bank at the other branch was extremely busy, probably because the nearby branch was closed. The staff at the counters all looked very busy. Wow, it's really crowded here.
Yes, let's get a ticket number.
We approached a machine near a seemingly new bank employee. "Excuse me," I said, reaching for a ticket.
Hello, what brings you here today?
The bank employee asked before I could take a number. His name tag says Williams. "We're here to make a withdrawal."
If that's the case, you can use the ATM, please.
Williams said, politely suggesting the ATM. However, the amount we needed to withdraw was more than what the ATM could handle. I decided to explain this to Williams. "We need a significant amount, so we'll need to go through the teller, please." Williams's expression changed upon hearing my words.
Sir, do you really need this money today? Excuse me for asking, but are you aware of wire transfer fraud?
Williams asked with a stern face. He must have been concerned, I thought. Being a bank employee, he must have said this out of a sense of justice. Appreciating his kind consideration, I told him, "It's for work, so it's not a scam." However, Williams was not convinced.
Why don't you reconsider? Is there any mistake?
Eventually, he said, "I can't believe an elderly person would need such a large amount of money." He was clearly suspecting wire transfer fraud. No matter what I said, he stubbornly refused to serve us. But what to do? We had our reasons too. After all, we genuinely needed the money for a legitimate reason. We couldn't back down, especially since we had traveled to this place for that purpose. After a frustrating back and forth, realizing that we were not going to give up, Williams let out a heavy sigh. Then he said something completely unexpected.
I'm terribly sorry, but as of now, due to the manager's decision, our senior customers cannot be served.
Incredibly, he was trying to force us out on a whim. I and Linda exchanged shocked looks. Behind us, other customers were lined up, forming a small queue, and of course, among them were some elderly people. Everyone looked a bit anxious. Once again, I asked him, "What is that all about?" Williams firmly repeated, "Elderly customers are not allowed to use our services." His attitude, which I had initially perceived as just, had become oppressive. Seeing this, Linda suddenly let out a sinister laugh. This was not good. Not good at all. William looked at my wife questioningly, but I held my head in despair. Because I knew that my wife laughs like this only when she is really angry. Thinking it was futile to argue with Williams, she spoke to another bank employee.
Hey, you there, the one with the pink tie. Can I have a word with you? Could you please contact the manager? Ask him to come to the president's office.
The bank employee my wife called over was wearing a pink tie. It was clear that he was quite senior and held some sort of position. He surveyed the interior of the store with a strict posture. Seeing Linda, his face turned pale. He exclaimed, "Understood, President, Mrs. Smith."
The president.
That lady is the president.
His sudden exclamation and action caused a stir among those present. The busy bank went silent for a moment, and all eyes were on us. In fact, Linda is the president of this major bank. Though it was her day off, we had some business at the bank. Unfortunately, our local branch was closed. We decided to visit this one, partly for inspection. Williams, realizing the situation from his superior's attitude and words, had turned from pale to ashen.
I'm terribly sorry. I deeply apologize for my disrespectful behavior.
The branch manager desperately apologizes to us in the president's office.
Williams, you apologize too.
The branch manager had William apologize to us as well. It had turned into quite a situation. Standing next to my explosively angry wife, I watched the manager and Williams. They looked uncomfortable. I have only seen their frowns since we entered this room.
Why did you behave in such a manner?
Linda asked in a calm, presidential manner. Williams, prompted by a glance from the manager, answered,
It's because of the prevalence of wire transfer fraud. We were trained to be cautious when elderly customers handle large sums of money.
Of course, that's very important.
She acknowledged his point, but noted it was somewhat excessive.
We are requesting a withdrawal for a legitimate reason.
Yes.
It's important to make judgments without preconceptions. Sometimes, it's crucial to listen to others' opinions.
William nodded his head, unable to speak. He was the youngest staff member at this branch. Perhaps that's why he became so flustered. But what was he in a hurry for? Curious, I asked him, He replied, I wanted to take credit for it.
I consulted others thinking they might take the credit.
Credit.
Well, if I prevent a fraud, I get praised and maybe even rewarded, right?
He said so with an innocent smile. Everyone was taken aback. No one expected such a reason behind his eagerness. It was a surprising response that seemed to deflate the tension. My dear, you can cause discomfort to customers just to satisfy your vanity or self-fulfillment. Even if you suspect fraud, you need to explain it without making the customer uncomfortable. You were too forceful, Linda explained. Still, Williams seemed somewhat unconvinced. However, this incident turned out to be a fortunate case because the victim was us. If it had been another elderly person, it could have led to significant damage.
Many of the elderly customers who use our branch bank are wealthy. Isn't that right, manager?
When Linda asked the manager, he vigorously nodded his head in agreement.
Do you realize the extent of the damage if they felt slighted and shifted their transactions? The bank could face a loss big enough to shut down.
With this explanation, Williams seemed to finally understand. He looked regretful as he realized the mistake of his actions. Linda nodded quietly in response. Then, Linda said, this isn't just about him. We need to re-educate all the staff, and she stood up to leave. Understood. I'm very sorry, the manager replied, looking slightly better than before. It seemed resolved. Phew, what an ordeal. Now, to finish our business and grab a meal. Just as I was thinking this. At that moment, I believed that everything had been resolved. The four of us left the president's office. We headed back into the bank to complete our original transaction.
Shall we proceed with your withdrawal then?
The manager asked, personally attending to us. Williams was watching him closely, eager to learn the correct approach. Yes, please. I was about to respond when suddenly, bang! A loud noise echoed through the bank. We quickly looked towards the source of the sound and saw three individuals wearing ski masks. One of them was pointing a gun at the ceiling. The sound from earlier might have been caused by this gunshot. Then, one of them started threatening a female bank employee. Give us the money. In his hand, he was holding a survival knife.
Ah!
The manager was so frightened that he screamed and collapsed on the spot. Williams, standing next to him, had turned deathly pale, frozen in place. What is this? A robbery? Despite the obviously alarming situation, I tried to stay as calm as possible. I glanced again at the ceiling where the supposed shot was fired. Curiously, the ceiling remained in pristine condition. I see, so that's what it was. It's a bluff, I realized. The gun must be a toy. There's no hole in the ceiling, I whispered to Linda. She nodded slightly after looking up.
Hey, don't resist or I'll shoot. Do as you're told. Put down your phones and gather here.
Employees and customers were herded together. They took away our cell phones, our means of communication.
He's the manager of this bank.
Criminal leader bellowed in a commanding voice. Hearing this, the manager let out another whimper. Such a blatant reaction was only going to give away his position and earn the robber's disdain. Sure enough, the robber approached the manager and ordered, "Stuff the money in the bag." The manager, trembling with fear, hesitantly followed the instructions.
Don't even think about calling the cops.
The robber shouted, causing the manager to drop the money and stumble in fear. He must be feeling pressured, as the task is not progressing smoothly. The manager's body was covered in oily sweat. Just as the irate robber was about to yell at the manager again. I can see that the sound was small, but the sound of the police car siren can be heard. And that sound was indeed getting louder as it approached us.
You the hell called them?
Bro, we gotta deal with this. They're coming.
Realizing the police had been alerted, the robbers started to panic.
Damn it. Change of plans. Close all doors and windows. Hey you, lower the shutter.
They ordered the manager. The manager pressed the lock button with a trembling hand. They decided to barricade themselves in the bank. I quickly surveyed the hostages. There were a few elderly individuals, some young women, and a child of about 2 years old. There were no strong young men.
Arrange a getaway vehicle.
One robber gave orders to the police using a megaphone. But the police weren't going to easily comply with such demands. Careful not to harm the hostages, the police began negotiating with them to release the hostages first. In the midst of this, the negotiations were becoming increasingly difficult. Both sides were making demands that neither wanted to concede.
Mommy, I want to go home.
The 4-year-old girl started crying. She had been quiet for a while, enduring hunger and fear. However, the 2-year-old girl had finally reached her limit. The criminal leader shouted, "Hey, shut that kid up," and approached the mother and daughter. And then, he pointed his gun at the mother and daughter. While it was just a toy gun, it must have been quite frightening for anyone who didn't know that. The mother, completely terrified, hugged her child protectively and apologized. However, this child was only 2 years old. Even though her mother tried to comfort her, she couldn't stop crying. Damn it! The criminal glared at the mother and daughter with intensity.
I'm sorry.
The mother said so, and at that moment, an elderly woman approached the child. The woman made eye contact with the little girl and spoke to her gently.
Oh dear, it's all right.
She took out gloves from the pocket of her apron. When the woman spoke to her, the little girl stopped crying for a moment. In the meantime, the elderly woman turned the gloves into a puppet to capture the child's interest.
Hello. What's your name? How old are you? You're cute.
The puppet moved its fingers, mimicking speech. The girl, intrigued by this, stopped crying and started smiling. The elderly woman continued to engage with the child, who now seemed cheerful. Then the little girl started touching the glove puppet with a smile on her face. The woman gave the glove puppet to the girl, who then used it as a toy, pulling on it and putting her fingers inside. Instead of crying, she appeared to be in a much better mood. Seeing this, the elderly woman said, "I used to be a child care worker. You know, I love children. You're such a cutie." She spoke to the mother with a warm smile. The mother lowered her head with a relieved expression. Then, another elderly woman began comforting the mother, gently patting her back.
Are you pregnant, dear? Are you okay?
The elderly woman asked, and the mother nodded slightly. How did she know, I wonder? At first glance, her belly didn't appear swollen, and you couldn't tell she was pregnant just by looking. However, there was a maternity mark on the bag she was carrying over her shoulder. The woman noticed the mark and spoke to the mother. The elderly women surrounded the mother and child, protecting them.
Doing this here, all that stress is bad for your baby.
The elderly women murmured so, directing silent condemnation towards the criminals. The other customers joined in, giving the criminals cold glares. The robbers seemed to have their conscience pricked by that silent accusation, their eyes swimming. I looked around. Is there anything that can break this situation? Then I noticed a cane that someone had brought. This might be useful. I gently tapped the shoulder of an elderly man who was nearby. When the elderly man turned towards us, tilting his head slightly in our direction, I discreetly pointed to the cane, trying not to be noticed by the criminals. Seeing my gesture, the man nodded slightly, acknowledging the cue. The other elderly person beside him also did the same, giving us a knowing look. As the situation became clearer to him, the elderly man smiled and nodded in our direction. At that moment, my wife, Linda, suddenly stood up, taking everyone by surprise.
What's going on, old lady?
The criminal leader shouted in response to her sudden action. Undeterred by their intimidating demeanor, Linda stepped forward and addressed the criminals with confidence.
I am the president of this bank.
She declared loudly, holding out her business card for them to see. She maintained a poised posture.
Isn't just me as a hostage enough?
Don't speak out of turn. Shut up.
The criminal snapped defiantly, raising his voice. Linda, embittered by the criminal's outburst, continued speaking.
Please release the other people. There are children and pregnant women here. Some people aren't feeling well. If we get hurt, or if something worse happens, your crimes will become even more severe.
The criminal was left speechless by Linda's reasonable argument.
Boss, what should we do?
The minions asked so, turning their gazes towards the leader. The leader appeared visibly shaken, contemplating the best course of action.
If we use this old lady as a hostage.
But if the police come in while we're releasing her,
the charges will be even more severe.
The minions each voiced their own thoughts as they spoke freely. The chaos on the side of the criminals became increasingly noticeable as they observed the hostages in silence. However, it was the leader of the robbers who ultimately silenced them with a stern command. "Quiet," he shouted at his minions. And the room fell silent in response to this forceful tone.
Listen up. If we don't get caught, none of these charges matter.
While it was a reckless perspective, the leader's strong words seemed to unite his henchmen's thoughts, and their chaotic discussions began to converge. This was our chance. This was our chance. The elderly man with the cane and I seized the moment, moving quietly behind the criminals.
What?
The leader was surprised by the sudden action. I didn't hesitate and swiftly twisted the arm of the leader.
Ouch.
I added more pressure, causing the wincing criminal even more pain. With my full body weight, I held him down. This rendered the man unable to move anymore. The other elderly man with the cane efficiently disarmed the remaining criminals by striking their weapons with his cane. Another elderly man executed a judo throw. The criminals, now disorganized, were struggling to respond. Our roles as hostages and the criminals' positions were completely reversed. We thus succeeded in restraining the criminals. Almost simultaneously, police officers stormed into the bank.
Over here. The criminals are right here.
During our scuffle with the criminals, it seemed someone had quietly facilitated contact with the police. The elderly woman who had been a hostage appeared, guiding the police. As soon as the police entered, I released the restraints on the criminals and handed them over to the police. Everyone was apprehended safely. Thank goodness no one was injured. As I took a breath and relaxed, my eyes met with the police officer who was in charge of the scene. Spotting me, he hurriedly approached.
Thank you for your cooperation, John. You really helped us out here.
The approaching police officer gave me a courtesy salute. A natural smile spread across my face when I recognized that familiar face. And there was a reason for it, as he used to be my direct subordinate. To be precise, he might be better described as a former subordinate. This officer had been one of my most trusted subordinates during my time in the force. As I briefly explained the events to the police officer, the bank employee Williams rushed over. "John, you are an amazing person. I deeply regret my rude behavior," he said. His fast-paced speech and sparkling eyes conveyed his genuine admiration. No, it was the bravery of everyone here that made the difference.
Indeed, everyone here is amazing. I was so impressed by everyone. I couldn't do anything myself.
Williams said so, looking somewhat downcast. I chuckled as I watched his expression.
The people in this community are really energetic. Even the elderly folks are full of vitality, which makes it reassuring for the police.
It was true that the people in this area were energetic. Two individuals who helped me subdue the criminals were martial arts instructors, one in kendo and the other in judo. After retiring, they had dedicated their time to volunteering for crime prevention workshops and patrolling the area. Physically, they were no less fit than young adults. As for my wife, she had self-defense training. And she was confident that she would be all right even if the criminals attacked her. I was slightly concerned about her level of confidence, given that she was my wife, but it was undeniable that she was a strong and capable woman. She held the position of bank president, carrying significant mental and physical responsibilities.
Oh, by the way,
the police officer said so, as if he remembered something.
Oh, by the way, that person, the manager, is quite competent as well. After swiftly contacting the police, he pretended to be frightened and delayed the criminals. Thanks to him, we were able to arrive at the scene before any casualties occurred.
I couldn't help but admire the manager's quick thinking. Despite always appearing frightened with a shaky voice, he was a clever strategist. I thought that he was a brilliant man.
It seems like everyone at the bank is well trained. That's why you can respond so quickly in these situations. It's impressive for a company.
The police officer smiled quietly as he spoke. When the bank was praised, I was happy because I felt as if Linda, the president, had been honored. I looked at the elderly people in this town and thought of certain individuals, my grandparents. Both of them are old and frail now. That's why I feel a strong urge to protect the elderly, just like I should protect my grandparents. Even with online scams, I strongly desired to prevent them before they happened. But today, I witnessed an astonishing reality. All of these people were incredibly lively, and it turned out that I, who was almost overwhelmed, was the one being protected. The fact of the fraud and the reality that nothing had happened to me, I felt a kind of shock. Seeing me in that state, John started talking to me. I do want to stay healthy for as long as possible, but we never know what the future holds. I was about to say that's not true, I thought to myself, but John's expression was quite serious. Unfortunately, that's the reality. Tomorrow, we might be confined to our beds. So, while we can, we want to think and act as much as possible.
I see.
Your desire to protect is admirable and makes me happy. But don't judge elderly people solely based on their age. Of course, some people genuinely need help, so it's best to offer assistance after getting to know each individual and understanding their situation. Listening to that, I realized that even among the elderly, there are various types of people. It might be wrong to assume they all need protection because they are considered weak. Also, just as there are active elderly people, some young individuals might be pregnant or have young children to care for, and there are many people with invisible illnesses and conditions. I had overlooked these facts. It was like scales falling from my eyes. He muttered to himself, being kind and gentle to everyone, not just the elderly. It felt like those words had become a motto that infiltrated my mind. It gave me a new goal and a surge of motivation. Williams had regained his natural sparkle in his eyes. With everything settled, the criminals were apprehended by the police. Now, I could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Today, we had been truly challenging. I thought this as I patted my shoulder. I had remembered the real reason I came here. I still hadn't deposited the money. Actually, my eldest daughter had just built a new house recently. In addition to that, my eldest son's wife had given birth. There were also celebrations for my grandchildren starting school. We needed money in quick succession.
It seems like celebrations require cash, after all.
My wife, standing beside me, also had a troubled expression. Then the bank manager appeared, straightening his wrinkled suit. He smiled kindly and said, "I'm sorry for the delay, but I'm here to assist you." After successfully celebrating our children and grandchildren, our life as a couple returned to peace. It was springtime. The weather had been warming up here lately, making it perfect for planting vegetable seedlings. Tomatoes, cucumbers, eggplants. It was ideal for planting vegetables. However, I had a failed experience last year. I had miscalculated the amount I needed to plant, resulting in a surplus of cucumbers. We ended up using them even in miso soup. This year, I needed to be more careful to avoid such a situation. But well, if I still had excess, I could pack them in bags and sell them as $1 vegetables. That also sounded fun. However, since I was controlling the planting amount this way, there might be some extra space in the garden. If there was room, I wanted to plant sunflower seeds, which my wife liked. She would surely be delighted. I started planning a bit ahead for the upcoming days. As I did, I became more and more excited about the summer to come. My cell phone made a lively sound on the desk. It was the notification sound for someone liking my recent post. Lately, I have been hooked on sharing updates about my garden on social media. The person who liked it was one of my elderly neighbors. Just like me, they enjoyed trying new things and had a curious spirit. They spent their days discovering new things and enjoying their retirement. I wanted to be like them. Even as I got older, I wanted to stay active. I wanted to contribute within my capabilities and continue to help others. I'm still very much in the game. I have plenty of dreams, hopes, and excitement. I plan to live my second life beautifully, hand in hand with my family and the people in my community. For that reason, I'll give it my all today, just like always.
My name is John Miller. I'm 40 years old. I have a wife, Emily, who's a decade younger than me. Emily is beautiful and gentle, and I'm really proud of her. We were on a hot spring holiday on that day, and we were so satisfied with enjoying a hot spring and delicious food. But then something happened. After finishing our meal at the hotel restaurant, we were heading back to our room.
Well, lady, you're a beauty.
A man approached Emily. He seemed to be in his mid-30s and looked formidable.
She is gorgeous.
She's totally my type, too.
There were two other guys who seemed to be friends with the first man. These two looked like they are in their mid-20s.
Oh, thank you.
Emily hesitantly responded to them. It was a safe response. Then,
Are you her husband?
the man talked to me. Yes, I am.
How interesting.
The first guy was staring at me. It was incredibly creepy. At that moment, he burst out laughing. And then he started laughing loudly.
No way, you're her husband.
I didn't get why they were laughing, but it soon became clear.
You're just an old guy. You don't match this beauty at all.
Totally, it's like a goddess with a regular Joe.
Toward that,
They were mocking that Emily and I were mismatched. Yes, I'm just an ordinary middle-aged man. And Emily is younger and beautiful. I know that we are not well matched, but I consider myself lucky to be married to her. However, their rudeness was too much.
Is it money? Did you marry her with your money?
Yeah, right, it must be the money. There is no way that she'd marry an old guy like you.
otherwise, how could she end up with such a loser?
Please, don't be rude. I said that without thinking. Because I couldn't stand their attitude. I didn't buy her with my money. Emily and I married not because of money, but love. I meant it literally. We first met at the workplace and fell for each other. There was no ulterior motive. She chose to marry me even though there wasn't any apparent benefit in it for her. I felt like her feelings were being insulted, so I instinctively refuted. Just when I did so, the man's eyebrows twitched. He seemed a bit irritated.
Oh, really? So you love each other, huh?
And he stared at Emily. She looked uncomfortable. Then suddenly, he brightened up.
I get it now.
He exclaimed.
Your wife likes older guys, right?
It might be true that she has a preference for older men, considering the fact that she married me.
Well,
It wasn't clear if she was being honest or just playing along with the conversation. And
See, I knew it.
the man said cheerfully. And then he made an unbelievable statement.
All right. Your wife will have fun with us tonight. Old man, you better head back.
He said such a thing all of a sudden. What are you talking about?
We're saying she's spending the night in our room. You're no longer needed. You can go back to your room.
And he grabbed Emily's hand and tried to take her to his room. Stop it. Let go of her. I demanded, pulling her back to me. And I standed protectively in front of her, staring at them. Do you even realize what you're doing?
What? Of course, I do. I'm inviting her to our room.
That's not funny. You can't possibly think that's okay.
But it is okay.
Then he revealed something shocking.
Because we're mobsters.
I was stunned to learn their true identities. But it also made sense, given their brutish behavior.
Hey, let's go.
The mobster tried to grab Emily's hand again, but I caught it. And
ouch.
I twisted his hand sharply. You see, I'm a former cop and even served in a special forces unit. I had to retire due to a severe leg injury sustained during intense training, but I'm not weak. However, my injured leg can't withstand strenuous activity. So, I worried a bit about fighting.
Hey, boss.
2 other mobsters started to approach. But
yow.
I twisted the arm of the first man even harder. As I expected, they stopped in their tracks. What you guys are trying to do is a crime. If you don't stop, I'll call the cops. I shouted at them. Then they seemed to relent.
Okay, we get it. Sorry, just let go of me.
The mobster pleaded for mercy. Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure. We were just a bit too drunk and got carried away. Sorry about that.
That's right. Our boss gets like this when he drinks. Please let go of his hand. I'm begging you.
The 3 men seemed genuinely remorseful. Meanwhile, people started to gather around. I worried that I might end up looking like the bad guy in this situation. So reluctantly, I let go of the mobster's hand. But the moment I did, things took a turn. As soon as his hand was free, the mobster spun around to face me. And
idiot,
the mobster said as he punched me right in the face. Screams rose from the onlookers as I fell down the floor. My face hurted so badly.
John!
Emily cried out in concern. But the mobster wasn't done.
Hey, you're coming with us.
He snarled, grabbing Emily's hand.
Don't get cocky, old man.
Get lost.
As they said this, 2 other mobsters started kicking me repeatedly. I tried to protect my head with my arms.
Hey, what are you doing?
The innkeeper, having heard the commotion, and rushed over. But the mobster shouted loudly enough to echo through the inn.
I'm part of the Johnson gang. Anyone got a problem with that? Come at me. I'll take you all on.
With that one statement, everyone fell deathly silent. They seemed overwhelmed by the mobster's intimidating presence.
Listen up. I've memorized all your faces, guests. If anyone dares to call the police, the Johnson gang will come knocking at your door. Got it?
He threatened everyone in an experienced way.
Let's go.
He pulled Emily along. Wait. I lay on the floor, powerless. The only thing I could do was watching it helplessly. But then, something unbelievable happened, and everyone was staring at. The mobster was suddenly flying in the air. He screamed as he hit the ground. This shocking sight left me, the other mobsters, the innkeeper, and all the onlookers speechless. It was Emily who had done it. When Emily was about to be forcibly taken by the mobster, she quickly grabbed his arm. Then, she spun around holding his hand, and she threw the mobster on the ground. Was that a shoulder throw? It was a perfect shoulder throw. but I had no idea how Emily could do something like that despite her gentleness. Then,
Hey, don't mess with me.
the mobster got up from the ground. He raised his fist and lunged at Emily. But she swiftly grabbed his hand and twisted it so that she immobilized him with a joint lock.
Let go.
He screamed in pain. Then Emily took an unexpected action.
Ah.
Emily then poked her fingers into the mobster's eyes. He fell to the ground, rolling in agony.
Hey, boss.
Lady, what are you doing?
Of course, the other two mobsters couldn't just stand by. They tried to beat Emily, but it was pointless, as one of them swung at her. She grabbed his arm, twisted it, and blinded him with a poke to the eyes. The other mobster hesitated, expecting an eye poke, but when he flinched, she hit him in the solar plexus. Then, as he was reeling in pain, she finishes him off with another eye poke.
My eyes.
Arg.
Both mobsters ripped on the ground in pain. It all happened in the blink of an eye. We were all stunned, watching the scene unfold. Then Emily turned to us.
Bring something to tie them up with.
We were snapping back to reality. We realized we needed to restrain the mobsters before they could start trouble again.
I'll bring duct tape.
The innkeeper, rushing off to fetch it. Emily, the innkeeper, and I then used duct tape to bind the mobster's arms and legs. We managed to restrain all three of them.
Wow.
The onlookers cheered and started applauding. I wanted to applaud Emily, too. But I had so many questions.
Please call the police.
Yes, I will.
After Emily instructed the innkeeper, I asked her a question. How could you do all that? As I spoke, Emily laughed with an air of embarrassment. Then she explained,
Actually, I've been learning Aikido from my grandfather since I was a child.
Her grandfather, who had passed away before we got married, was an Aikido master and even ran a dojo. From a young age, she was rigorously trained by him daily.
Grandpa really loved me and wanted me to be able to defend myself. He was quite strict in his teachings.
She made a face like she had a bitter hangover as she said that. It must have been tough training. But as a result, she grew skilled enough to become a runner-up in a national Aikido tournament. She also learned judo techniques, striking and kicking. In other words, she had received special training in self-defense since she was a child.
This time, Grandpa's teachings really came in handy. He always said to aim for the eyes if facing multiple opponents.
The eyes. You did target them. But why the eyes?
Aiming for the eyes allows you to incapacitate your opponent quickly with a minimal effort, especially when there are several of them.
It made sense. And indeed, it worked just as her grandfather had said.
Well, I could have knocked them out too. But with people watching, I had to be careful not to go overboard with self-defense.
She muttered. That comment was a bit scary, to be honest. After hearing her explanation, I finally understood. But there was one more thing I was curious about. So, why did you never mention this before?
Huh?
I mean, it's totally fine, but you could have told me sooner, right? She looked embarrassed again.
Well, I thought it might be embarrassing to be strong, and I was worried you might not like it.
She was really cute when she said that. I wouldn't dislike you for that. It's totally fine. I said it with a laugh.
I thought so, but it's hard to tell this kind of thing.
It's okay, really.
Really?
Yes, really, of course.
I'm glad. Then next time, I'll tell you about the time I took down 5 delinquents.
I wasn't sure I wanted to hear that story, but I nodded anyway.
Damn, what the hell are you guys?
The mobster suddenly spoke up. The mobsters, their hands and feet tied, sat together on the floor.
You think you can get away with this?
That's right. Do you even know who we are?
We're part of the Johnson gang.
Johnson Gang. I don't really know them.
You don't know the Johnson gang. We're a mob with over 30 members, controlling this area.
There's no one around here who doesn't know the Johnson gang. Nobody dares to cross us.
Oh, despite being so weak.
Emily's tone was a bit provocative, perhaps emboldened by her recent actions.
Are you kidding me?
Of course we are. After all, you 3 men just got beaten by a single woman.
Shut up. If we weren't caught off guard.
That's what all defeated men say, right? If we weren't caught off guard. As if you could have won otherwise.
You're messing with us.
The mobsters shouted. They squirming around helplessly, bound with duct tape like a caterpillar.
Damn it. We'll make you regret this.
The mobster's pride was evidently hurt as he continued to threaten us.
Exactly. We can't just let this go.
We'll show you how.
The other 2 chimed in. It's hard to take you seriously when you can't even move. Maybe it's time to stop bluffing. The mobster smirked. And
this isn't bluffing,
replied in a low voice. What do you mean?
Our boss from the Johnson gang never forgives those who defy us. Once he finds out what you've done, he'll start retaliating. And by then, it'll be too late for regrets. Not just you, but your families will suffer our revenge. Ultimately, you're the ones who'll end up in hell.
They laughed menacingly together. It's typical mobster behavior. To retaliate to protect their reputation. They wanted to show what happens when someone crosses them, maintaining the gang's dignity.
What's wrong? Got scared all of a sudden?
The mobster taunted me when I fell silent. Then he made a suggestion.
If you finally realized what you've done, I have a proposition. Call the police now and say it was a mistake to report.
A mistake? I repeated in surprise.
Yes, a mistake. And then release us. If you do, we'll act like none of this ever happened. We'll forget it, and you should too. We all live happily ever after. How about it? It's a win-win, isn't it?
I wasn't sure if the mobster was telling the truth. But since they were mobsters, there was a real risk of retaliation. I fought for a moment, and then came up with a plan. I can't trust what you're saying. You're just trying to escape. The mobster smiled thinly and replied,
Do you want to arrest us and find out if we're lying? Though, if you do, it's the end for you.
The end, huh? You keep saying that. But, is the Johnson gang really as scary as you say? I challenged. The mobster's eyes narrowed.
What?
I've never even heard of the Johnson gang. A small-time gang of just 30 members is not a big deal. Sounds more like a bunch of small-time thugs trying to scrape by. As I said it with a lock, the mobster lost his temper.
Don't underestimate us. You're just ignorant of how terrifying the Johnson gang is.
All this talk of strength, yet here you are, unable to move because of duct tape?
What? This is...
Let me tell you why you're in this situation. It's because you're weak, all talk, and just a bunch of pathetic mobsters.
Who are you calling pathetic?
Pathetic, right? You three got completely defeated by a girl, and all you do is talk big. Look at yourselves objectively for a moment. You look like caterpillars squirming on the ground. Even the other guests must be thinking, those mobsters are all talk after all.
Don't joke around. The Johnson gang extorts money from all over the U.S. We're one of the top mob groups.
Extorting money? Like petty extortion?
No, it's sophisticated fraud.
Sophisticated fraud? Oh, like those scam calls? Is that what you are proud of?
Shut up. Having money means we have power. Even with few numbers, Johnson Transportation has a significant influence in the underworld. Not just fraud. We've sunk many who oppose the Johnson gang into the sea. And you'll face the same fate for doing this to us.
Hearing all this, I felt relieved. I could relax now. Then I told the mobsters a fact. So, apart from your past crimes, for the ongoing sophisticated fraud, a raid should quickly uncover evidence.
What? Raid? What are you talking about?
I used to be a cop and a member of a special forces unit. The mobster's eyes widened as I revealed the fact.
A cop?
Yes, and I know a lot of cops. I'll make sure to tell them everything you just said. Then the whole Johnson gang will be arrested. You won't be able to retaliate.
That's a lie.
I provoked the mobsters for this reason. Sure, mobster retaliation is scary. No matter how strong Emily is against a larger group, we'd be helpless. But if the gang is arrested and disbanded, they won't be able to retaliate. So I egged them on to confirm their criminal activities.
That's quite clever, a former cop.
Emily suddenly said, "It might have been the first time I showed such a police-like behavior." Thank you, thank you. I have to show myself in a good way sometimes.
You were quite cool, actually.
Really? Maybe I redeemed myself.
I never thought you were uncool in the first place.
Well, I did get pretty beaten up by these guys at first.
Not at all. You look like a hero protecting me.
Really?
Really. T was so heroic. That's why I just watched without doing anything.
What? You wanted to see me protecting you?
Yeah, though you couldn't quite pull it off.
True. We laughed together. But obviously, the mobsters weren't in the mood for laughter.
Hey, you two. Stop flirting.
Oh, sorry. Almost forgot about you. Forgot? We've been talking this whole time. How could you forget? My bad.
So, is it true that you used to be a cop?
Yeah, it's true.
Then, we really are.
That's right. It's not us who are finished. It's you guys. The mobster's face fell into despair. That makes sense. Because they had just confessed to their crimes.
Oh, boss, this is bad.
If the head leader finds out we spilled about the gang's crimes, he'll do something to us.
They finally realized the dire situation they were in. The mobster then turned to us with a forced smile.
But
What about it?
about what I said earlier.
A joke?
Well, it was all a joke. I mean, us being mobsters, being part of the Johnson gang, doing sophisticated fraud. It was all a joke. We just said it to save ourselves.
Do you really think I would believe that?
Right, that makes sense.
The mobster realized he couldn't fool us and started whispering with his companions.
What do we do?
If pretending it was a lie won't work, maybe we should just apologize.
Yeah, maybe they'll forgive us.
Right.
They concluded their conversation and, still bound, managed to kneel in a formal apology. And
we sincerely apologize for the trouble we've caused.
Sorry.
We're truly sorry.
They apologized sincerely.
Well, quick to change your tune.
Do you really think apologizing now will get you off the hook?
Well, we were just a bit drunk from the hot springs and got carried away.
I feel like I've heard that excuse before.
We really are sorry. We promise not to do anything like this again. Please forgive us.
I took a deep sigh. They were only thinking about themselves. Listen.
What?
Do you really think after all you've done, you can be forgiven just like that?
But if we stay like this, it's bad for us, right?
It's bad for us. If we get arrested, and the boss finds out.
Think of it as a favor. Please forgive us.
If the gang's activities are exposed, the boss will be arrested too. Then you'll be safe?
That's true, but still, nobody wants to get arrested, right?
Don't joke around. I shouted, infuriated. The mobsters flinched. You guys just harassed random people, never considering their feelings, just pushing your desires onto them. This time, my wife happened to be strong enough to stop you, but what if she wasn't? What then? What you did is absolutely inexcusable. And this isn't the first time you've done something like this, right? People like you belong behind bars. The Johnson gang's activities can't be overlooked either. Everything you're facing now is your own doing. Understand? The three mobsters slumped in defeat, realizing they had no way out. Then, we heard the sound of sirens in the distance. The police that the innkeeper had called were finally arriving.
This is the end for us.
One of the mobsters muttered dejectedly. The police arrived and took our statements. The three mobsters were taken into custody, and Emily and I went to the police station to give a full account. I revealed my identity and explained everything that had happened, including the activities of the Johnson gang. And finally, after a long day, it was over. A few months later, on a day off, Emily and I were enjoying a quiet day at home. The mobsters had been arrested for assaulting me, and it turned out the police had already been aware of the Johnson gang. A raid was conducted on their office not long after, resulting in the arrest of the boss and all members for their involvement in sophisticated fraud. Investigations into their other crimes were still ongoing.
Hey, do you want to hear some good news?
Emily suddenly asked as we lounged on the sofa. What is it?
Actually,
she shared something that took me by surprise. Really? Are you serious?
Yes. Congratulations, you're going to be a dad.
The good news from Emily was that we were expecting a baby. Despite the significant age difference and opposition from various people when we married, we overcame it all to fulfill this dream. I'm truly happy to have married you. I hugged her. I guess there will be tough and challenging times in our lives, but I will protect Emily and our child with everything I have.